Hello, and welcome to another edition of Dooner's Guide Through Mirkwood. Today we have a very special guest, Malcolm Tent. It's a big part of my life, my history, and we're going to dig into all that in just a short time. So with that being said, hey Kirk, how you doing out there in Columbus? Welcome back.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm doing good.
All right, great to see your face. I hope you enjoyed your week off last week with your boy and your wife.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great.
Cool. All right, so quick update from the Mayapack Compassion Warriors, the group me and Katie Donovan created to send treats and snacks and love down to the folks at the White Plains Hospital continues. We had a couple of days off this week. Her Aunt Mickey was able to rest up, the woman who she's been driving down who works against the COVID. And Mickey's going back to her normal job next week, which is good. That means things are starting to change to normal slowly. My wife will continue her redeployment with the results call lab. So we're not too happy about that. She's actually working right now, 10-hour day on a Sunday. So she'll continue the fight. I will continue to support her, and we'll see it through to the other end. Hopefully it'll be not much more than a couple weeks because it's impacting her and impacting us, and we want her to get back to normal and all that good stuff. So with that being said, Kirk, how are things looking out in Columbus?
All right. Yeah, I mean, we got a slow open here, and things are, they're picking up. People are starting to go into restaurant. Patios are open, and they were packing the patios in Short North here in Columbus, which, people are antsy. People want to get back to things. So I don't, no judgment there. But my son is going to be going back to maybe summer camp, and we're kind of weighing that as a possibility. He really needs to be with his friends and his teachers. So that would be in June, and they're gonna be doing some things to change that, limit the amount of kids in the class, and one teacher per 5, I think, students. So I think it's probably going to be okay to do that, and I know he's gonna I mean, anytime he sees a kid walk by the house, he's just chasing him down the street. So yeah, it'll be good for him. And but we're just weighing that as, thinking about the other side of that, which is just still being, a little cautious. So, but yeah, things are moving forward. So, but here we are.
We'll be okay. We're going to make it through this. I know it for 100% fact. So, all right, let's get on to the good stuff. Mr. Malcolm Tent is with us. For me, I grew up in Carmel, New York. Went to St. James, and when I was about 6th, 7th grade, a couple of my older friends used to go to the store, Trash, and it was in I think Brookfield, and I was too young to go. I never went, but I used to give them money to get me 7 inches or punk album, whatever we couldn't order from Ian Mackay down in Discord or Jello out in Alternative Tentacles or Greg at SST. We had to go to Malcolm. So eventually that store moved to Danbury, came within my reach. And around the same year, I went to Malcolm's store for the first time and became a part of his culture. I also started working at a record store in Carmel called Mad Platters. So at that point in my life, I was listening to a lot of metal, AC/DC, Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, with a rock and roll, classic rock and roll history or foundation. I saw Bob Dylan in concert in Danbury. I don't know if Malcolm was at that. We'll ask him. But two of the biggest influences in my life were Malcolm Tent, because of all the great music and tapes he used to make for us and trade, and just great vibes and music he brought to the whole area. And then Joel Human, right? Because I worked with Joel at Mad Platters. So very, very honored to have Malcolm here today. With that being said, you know how I came to meet him. I'll shut up and let him introduce himself. He's got a lot to say. And so Malcolm, welcome. Thanks for coming. And how you doing?
Good to be here, Mike. Malcolm Tent from Trash American Style, TPOS Productions, current bass player for Anti-Scene, guitar player for They Hate Us, solo acoustic troubadour, globe trotting all over this planet, bass player for Ultra Bunny, chief archivist for the Bunny Brains and TPOS Records in general, noisemaker at Fried Man, occasional lead singer, lead guitarist, lead drummer, lead writer, lead backing vocalist for the band BB Gun, and there's probably a few others in there that I just plumb forgot because I got a lot going on, man. There's just a lot going on at all times.
That's great. You're also a filmmaker. You're also a filmmaker. I know a piece of work you did in 1991 that is very important to me, which we'll talk about. Yeah, well, we'll get to that.
Do tell.
special night with Nirvana. Me, Malcolm, and Kurt Cobain had a special night back in the 90s. We'll get to that. Let's go back in time a little though. So when we first met and around that time, you know, there were really 5 bands when I was thinking about talking to Malcolm that I wanted to talk about, and it was Black Flag, the Misfits, Ramones, Minor Threat, Fugazi, which I'm counting as one because Ian MacKay's Genius is, and the Dead Kennedys. Right. So let's talk about those. Those are bands that have brought me a lot of joy. Malcolm, I know I've bought many of records from each of those bands from you. I'm sure you've created bootleg tapes for me to you know bring some of that action to me, which was not as reachable back then. So let's start with Black Flag.
Black Flag is where everything starts and everything ends.
You know, I was lucky enough to see the benefit, the West Memphis 3 benefit. And to be able to see Keith Morris sing Nervous Breakdown and to see Henry Rollins come out and do Rise Above were 2 life-fulfilling moments for me. Now, I know I'm younger, right, so I didn't get a chance to see the real action. I know you did, Malcolm. So what are your thoughts on Black Flag and your history, and when did you see him first?
Well, first time I saw them was almost exactly, 38 years ago. It was May 11th, 1982. Saw Black Flag on the Damage tour at this little dump called the Finder's Lounge in Hollandale, Florida. For a scrawny, pale, undernourished suburban white boy like myself, it was quite the experience. It was my first ever punk rock show of any sort. I thought I was in hell. I had no experience at all with that kind of live music. Like, I'd been to a couple of concerts at that point, like in Coliseums.
How old were you, Malcolm?
At that time, I was 17.
So that's around the time I saw Nirvana. I was a little younger, but similar. So who'd you go with? What was the situation when you saw him?
Well, I went with my friend from high school, this guy named Rick. We went to the high school print shop where our friend Danny worked, and he made us these fake IDs because the legal age was 21 at the time. I was 17. Rick was 17 and a half. And we made these just terrible, terrible fake IDs. They were the worst looking things you ever saw in your life. But Finders was such an incredible dump that when we got to the front door where the bouncer was, and I timidly showed him my little, very badly done high school fake ID, he just laughed at it. He was like, "Come on, kid, forget it." Because the picture I used, I was probably 15 years old in it, you know,
right,
it was the picture I could get. And he laughed at me, and everybody else who was in line said, "Oh, come on, no one said the ID had to be real. Let him in, let him in, let him in." So
that's awesome.
he let us in because it was that kind of a complete and utter dump. It was a total dive. And, you know, for young little me, to be in this incredibly sleazy, dirty, smoke-filled, alcohol-soaked, dangerous atmosphere. I mean, literally, there were people like, there was this air of violence everywhere. People were talking about kicking the shit out of somebody in the parking lot, of pulling a knife on somebody. There was slam dancing. You know, the lead singer for one of the opening bands had a mohawk. I'd never ever seen anything like this in my life.
Little culture shock?
A lot. But I was already into punk rock. You know, I discovered punk rock in 1978. So I was conversant with the culture and I loved the music. And I had already heard one song by Black Flag. I'd heard Six Pack played on the local late night punk show.
That's a good one. So,
like, musically, I knew what was going on. Excuse me. Getting all choked up just thinking about it. But culturally, as far as really being there at a real life, honest to God, punk rock show with real punk rockers and hardcores and slam dancing and beer flying through the air and people getting spit on in the face. I mean, that was intense.
Did you enjoy it?
That was even before Black Flag hit the stage. I mean, this was just the 2 local opening bands, and then we had a long intermission, and then the band Saccharine Trust went on. I
remember Saccharine Trust, sure.
Saccharine Trust were on a whole other level. You know, they were really something. And then Black Flag went on, and just forget it. That was it. I'd never experienced anything like that even though I thought I was going to die and I was in fear for my life and I was surrounded by a bunch of maniacs, this spectacle of Black Flag with Henry Rollins, basically an uncaged animal,
Right.
stalking the stage and trying to turn his guts inside out physically through the fucking music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So even though you're in hell,
That was it.
It was a positive experience for you once Henry and they took over and
That pointed the way. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't like to think of bands as being influenced. I don't really think that bands ever influenced me per se, but they have opened the roadmap and shown me the direction that I could go in.
Right.
If you like another analogy, each band has presented me with a key that I could use to unlock any number of doors. And Black Flag definitely laid out the map and gave me a big fat key.
Yep. Yeah.
And,
No, very
that was
important to me
it.
as well.
What's
And
that?
when did you see him next? When did you see him next? Were you able to see him again?
Next, I saw Black Flag 6 times.
Oh, sweet.
Second time was in spring of 1984. And by then, Black Flag was a different animal. And that story is well chronicled elsewhere. I don't have to get into that here now.
Mhm.
But the sheer focused power of this version of Black Flag with Kira, Bill Stevenson, Henry, and Greg, the My
Yeah.
War lineup.
My
So what I
favorite
saw
album.
was the Damaged lineup in 1982.
Mhm.
So the Damaged lineup versus the My War lineup, whole different thing, but still overwhelmingly powerful.
Well, the
And
Live '84 album is just phenomenal.
Yes, and by this time I was actually in the scene.
Yeah.
I had a band. I had played shows.
Mhm.
My little band had a record that was out. And so I was actually connected with all these maniacs and psychopaths and drunks and, just this incredible cast of characters that made up the South Florida scene. And so Black Flag playing at Flynn's, which was the name of the venue, in the spring of '84 was a real focusing point for this whole thing. Excuse me. So the third time was Halloween night, 1984, on the Slip It In tour.
Oh man.
So I got to see Black Flag twice in 1984. That's the kind of touring ethic they had. They were utterly relentless, just nonstop. I actually opened that show doing a spoken word bit, which was hilarious. The promoter wanted to have all these poets, if you want to use that term, come up and do spoken word bits in between the SST bands who opened for Black Flag. Because Black Flag always toured with SST bands. And they were usually, in my opinion, pretty boring jam bands and pretty dull bunches of guys just up there jerking off for 45 minutes. But they were all friends of Greg Ginn's, so they got to do it. And the roadies and the merch guy, they'd all get up there and fuck around for 45 minutes while we waited for Black Flag to play. And so between that, we, the local spoken word people, got up and did spots. And I went on immediately before Black Flag. Why, I don't know, but
That's
I
a tough
did.
one. That's a tough act to open for.
Well, yeah, because they were setting up to play while I was trying to do my bit. And at one point, I was taking a deep breath to start my next routine, and Kira went up to me and said, "Look, we have to start playing now." And I said, "Done." I jumped off the stage, did a big swan dive off the stage. They kicked into it, and voila, there's Black Flag on the Slip It In tour on Halloween night in Miami Beach, Florida. You know, if it's possible to have one's life changed 3 times, that was the 3rd time. Excuse me, the 4th time was in June of '85, once again in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where I lived, at a place called the Fireman's Hall. This was on the Loose Nut tour. And what I remember about that was it was a rented hall, a concrete block structure, June 14th, 1985. June in Florida. It's hot.
Yeah, it is. Very hot.
It's hot. It's humid. This place had, if I remember correctly, 1 window installed air conditioner to try to cool the whole place down. And of course, the place was packed. I mean, just absolutely packed to the rafters. and they had to stop the show like halfway through because, people were passing out. The band couldn't play. You couldn't catch a breath. It was literally so humid in there. It was like a swamp. You couldn't breathe. You couldn't see.
Mhm.
So they stopped the show, opened up all the doors, let everybody out for a few minutes, opened the dinky little windows they had, let everybody back in, and the show continued. And that was the first time I actually successfully made an audio recording of Black Flag. I had Jerry Williams, who was the guy who engineered the Bad Brains Roar cassette, and
Okay.
he had 171. He was the Bad Brains sound man. He was in this band Blood Clot with all these Cro-Mags guys. He was the guy I gave the tape recorder to, and he stood in the middle of the mosh pit with the recorder aimed at the stage.
Excellent.
So I can truthfully say that recording was engineered by the great Jerry Williams.
That is sweet.
Black Flag Live at the Fireman's Hall on Flag Day in '85.
Amazing.
Next time was in July of '85 when my aforementioned band Broken Talent was on tour. We had a date that needed to be filled. Excuse me. We were going to be in Albany, New York. When I called the promoter, this guy, Dave Stein, I don't know why my voice is so cracky. You'll have to forgive me, please. I said, Dave, we're going to be in Albany. You got a show? He said, well, Black Flag's playing that night, and they don't like to have any other bands besides SST bands. But if you call Chuck Dukowski, maybe you can wrangle something. So I called Chuck Dukowski at the SST offices in LA, and I talked to him. And he didn't want to let us play, but I was like, God damn, I really want to open up for Black Flag again.
Yeah.
I really want to do this. Time out for 1 second. I have to take a sip of water.
Sure, take your time. Kirk, what's your favorite Black Flag song?
Favorite song?
Or a couple. What are a couple of your favorites? I'm a My War guy. My War is that's my song, my album.
Damaged is the album I wore out.
That's my number two. That's my number two.
I had a crappy boot tape. I had a tape I taped off a friend, and and then another tape until I wore that one. But yeah, we spent many nights hanging out just playing that incessantly.
Jealous Again's another one that's pretty strong in my.
I don't have any experience seeing them live, so let's let Malcolm continue.
Yeah. How you doing, Malcolm? You okay, buddy?
Got my voice back. I think I'm all right.
All right.
Okay, so I called Dukowski at the SST offices in Los Angeles, and he didn't want to let us play because it's an SST only bill. But I really wanted to open up for Black Flag, so I just worked on him. And I'm normally not that kind of guy, but I really wanted this to happen. So I worked on him. Finally, he said, "Are you guys any good?" And I totally lied, and I said, "Yeah, we're great." And he said, "Okay, you're on." He said, "If you believe you're that good, then you can play."
All right.
It's like completely faked him out. And the long tale of travails of us in my 1972 Dodge, driving from Miami to Albany with all of the breakdowns and the rip-offs and the misery that was interspersed amongst the gigs we played, to arrive in Albany right before the show began to see our name X'd out on the flyer because, this is pre-cell phone, pre-internet. The only way to communicate was via payphone if you were on the road.
Right.
Payphones were expensive and we were broke. So we could not be in touch with the promoters. They just assumed that we weren't going to show because we never talked to them. So we get there after all this misery to see that we weren't on the bill, and we were like, "No, we're here. We're playing. We are playing. We are playing." And so the promoter Dave said, "Well, all right, if you're here, you got to go talk to Black Flag and set it up, with them because they're not expecting you, and no SST bands."
Mm-hmm.
All
the facts are against you. Everything's against you going into it.
You go talk to Kira because she was the road manager. And so, oh boy, I have to go talk to Kira Rossler, who is one tough lady, let me tell you. You gotta be if you're running the Black Flag ship.
Mm-hmm.
She basically just looked at me with this disgust and said, you know that we don't tour with any non-SST bands, and Chuck Dukowski never told me about this, and no. And I said, call Dukowski. I spoke to him. He said it was okay. And she said, oh yeah? I'm going to call him. So she went over to the payphone and used a credit card number or something, called Dukowski. I'm like walking, and I'm like watching from across the room, and she's like, I can see her steaming. She's like, yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Okay. Hangs up the phone. She says, all right, you're on.
Yes.
Meanwhile, all the SST bands were already set up.
Mm-hmm.
The opening band, this time it wasn't October Faction or Tom Tricoli's Dog or Gone or one of those silly bands. This was St. Vitus who were opening up. And if you know anything about metal and American metal in the 80s, St. Vitus is major. They were already set up. Their whole back line was already set up, which meant stacks of Marshalls and, you know, stacks of Ampeg basses and, you know, bass cabinets, this gigantic double bass drum set. So the crew gets to work, they break it all down, and we bring in our dinky little homemade garbage and set it up. And that's when I had to tell Kira, oh, by the way, we don't have any drums. And she just looked at me like, who are these amateurs? Well, we were a bunch of amateurs. So,
you are what you is.
Since they had just broken down all of St. Vitus's drums, and Armando, the drummer, would not have let us use them anyway. It was a badass drum kit.
Oh, sure.
They go and ask Anthony from Black Flag if we can use his drums.
Holy cow.
He says, yeah.
Wow.
So the road crew goes and gets his drums and sets them up.
Oh, Kira must be so pissed.
Well, you know, she probably was, but man, these people were, to use the term, damn professional.
Yeah.
And if you've read any of Henry Rollins' tour books, you know that it was just, for them, was nothing but relentless labor and working like a bunch of damn dogs 26 hours a day. So this is just like one more bump in the road. This is just like one more whatever moment for these guys. This is just nothing, you know. Excuse me. So they get it all set up. We've got and when I say homemade, I mean literally homemade. I was playing through a homemade bass cabinet made out of plywood and a Radio Shack speaker. Our guitar player had this ridiculous Les Paul guitar with half of the fretboard sawed off and glued back onto the guitar. I wonder what Greg thought
of your being such an electronic guy. I wonder if he saw your gear.
He didn't watch. He didn't watch. The only people who watched were Kira and the entire Black Flag road crew. We were playing. They were to stage right. They lined the wall, and they stood there, and they watched us like this.
Oh, how'd it go?
Well, we sucked, but we did it.
You're in the books. You opened for Black Flag. You opened for Black Flag twice.
With their drums.
With their drums, yeah.
With their drums and with their road crew.
Right.
And we got to see Black Flag and St. Vitus. I mean, that's not a bad night.
That's a win-win.
Night, we went all around the room, and because New York had the returnable law, you could return a bottle and get whatever, 15 cents, I think, and we didn't have that in Florida. So we went out and we gathered garbage bags full of returnable bottles and took them to the delicatessen the next day next door and got like $35 or $40 for bottles. And that way we were able to eat for the next couple of days and put some gas in the car and make it down to Charlotte, North Carolina. So that was something else. And Henry writes about that gig in his book, and the backstage scene that he describes is accurate. Read it. I'll vouch for it. That's exactly what happened.
Cool.
So that was the 5th time. 6th time was in January of '86 at a place called the Cameo Theater in Miami Beach. We're back home. Black Flag is touring again. Big theater, probably held about 1,500 people. It's the In My Head tour. This was the night after the Skinheads beat up their sound man in Tampa. And so when Black Flag came to Miami the next day, Henry's hand was all bandaged because he had punched one of them out.
Jeez.
The sound man, Rat Man, looked like he'd just been like run over by a car. I mean, it was really bad.
Yeah.
The mood was really heavy at that one. And it was weird because it was a very nice old Art Deco theater. Seating, there's obviously still a big pit out front, but it was a whole different vibe. The band was winding down to a stop. Nobody was talking to each other. Greg was more into Gone than he was Black Flag.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't any hanging out or anything. It was just kind of like in, play, and go.
Right. Still
cool, still Black Flag, but it wasn't anywhere near the intensity of those first 5 times.
Mm-hmm. And how long after that did they break up? Pretty soon, right?
Well, they played their last show 5 months later.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that was it.
Wow. Thanks for sharing those. Those are amazing stories. Amazing. So
just in the interest of time, there are like so many other little details I could fill in there, but you get the basic idea. It's like each show in its own way was really monumental.
Yeah.
And Black Flag just was like, it was like I don't know how to describe it. It was like a platoon facing you full blast at all times.
Mm-hmm.
They did not on any level fuck around at all.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
for a young kid just finding his legs and getting into this thing and learning, that was an example to look at for sure.
A great blueprint of how to get it done, how to be serious and move past problems, get professional when a lot of bands around you are not professional, right?
Exactly. Us included, but we were learning.
Right. Wow. That's great. So yeah, I was not young enough to catch Black Flag. Obviously after Black Flag disbanded, Henry wrote the series of books and he did a series of spoken word. That's kind of when I first started digging in as I was listening to Black Flag and reading Henry's stuff. And then the first time I got to see him, I had an opportunity to see them open for the Beastie Boys. They were on the Check Your Head tour. I believe it was at Roseland. And so I was 15 or 16 at the time. I forget how old. I remember we're young enough to back then you could drive down, get a 40 ounce, get on the train, go down and see a show in the city. So me and my friends are walking in front of the Roseland and I look up and I see this really beautiful woman coming toward me. And again, I'm 16 or 17. I'm like, wow, she's beautiful. And then I look right next to her and it's Henry Rollins holding her hand. And I was like, oh my God, that's Henry. Oh. So as that was my first, like, there's the God walking past me. As I'm going to see the Beastie Boys and there's Henry walking right past me. And that rocked. The Henry Rollins band were great. But what you're describing, I felt when I saw the West Memphis 3 show, right? So that show was the Rollins band. Keith Morris came out and did, 7 or 8 tunes, Jealous Again, Nervous Breakdown, all the early stuff. And then Henry came out for Rise Above, and like you're explaining, it was like a big wave just went over the crowd. And then in that 10 seconds, a piece of my life was fulfilled from my Black Flag history that I didn't get to have like you did. So I'm really thankful I had that moment. I went with my cousin Casey. It was a lot of fun. Black Flag meant a whole lot to me too. So in the interest of time, again, any last thoughts on Black Flag, Malcolm?
Not really. I'll just do a little postscript to what you were saying. The Rollins band was really intense in their own right.
Yeah.
I'm sure they blazed a few trails and cracked a few skulls open in their own way. I saw them a whole bunch of times.
Yeah.
Between 1987 and 1991, and that's some pretty dang good stuff too.
Really good
That'll
stuff.
be another topic for another show.
Yeah, absolutely. Kirk, how about you? Anything on Black Flag?
I don't know, man. I'm just enjoying listening to his stories, man.
Yeah, we went deep.
I was just a kid in Euclid, Ohio, listening to punk and on shitty tapes in my friends' basements and drinking beer and listening to TV Party, man. Yeah.
Yeah, TV Party tonight.
Fuck yeah.
Woo.
Okay, so since
Yeah.
we went down such an awesome rabbit hole there, I think we're gonna have to make a little audible call here. I don't think we're gonna have time to I have too much to say about the other bands to be able to do it. So I'm gonna pick. I'm the host. I get to pick the band that really meant the most to me as far as who I got to see in the area, and that's the Ramones. So Malcolm, Kirk, we're gonna talk about the Ramones, and then we're gonna shelf our punk rock history discussion because there's some other things with Malcolm I want to talk about. Devo, Nirvana. Those are probably the two topics I don't want to end this call without talking about. So the Ramones meant so much to me growing up. Rock and Roll High School, I used to watch over and over again. Kirk, I know we've watched it together, and playing the songs, it was something at a young age you could do, right? It's pretty easy, straightforward. Compared to AC/DC or Black Sabbath or Rush or other bands I was listening to, the Ramones just had this AC/DC type 4/4 forward, 1/4/5 chords in your face, one after another, 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, into the next song, and I just loved something about that. It's so I think that's probably the most important punk band to me would be the Ramones. I got to see them at the old Ritz on 54th Street. I remember my uncle took me. He got me tickets for Christmas, and he was on crutches. He twisted his ankle or broke his leg or something, and there he was dragging this little punk kid, 15, down to see the Ramones, and the Lunatics opened up. And that was the first time I saw him, and just always loved them so much. Malcolm, your thoughts on the Ramones?
Ramones, I mean, I had said earlier that everything began and ended with Black Flag, but actually everything kind of begins, if not ends, with the Ramones. I mean, you really can't. That's such a cliche, but it's totally true, you know? Like the Ramones weren't the first, like the first punk band I discovered was the Sex Pistols
Right.
in 1978. And that led, one thing to another. Like I discovered the Ramones when I saw a copy of Rocket to Russia at the local record store, and the back cover especially with the Holmstrom cartoon of the pinhead on the rocket.
Yep, it's
And
amazing.
the song titles like Teenage Lobotomy, I Don't Care. There was a song on there that was 1 minute and 38 seconds long. I just couldn't fathom what was going on. I just knew I had to find out. So I bought the record, dropped the needle, and that was it. I mean, what more can you say? That was it. The Ramones were just so perfect in their concept and in their execution. You don't really think of the Ramones as being high conceptualists, but they really are conceptualists of the highest order. Their concept was so perfect that you didn't even know it was a concept. You just thought, oh, it's a bunch of nudniks in torn jeans and black leather jackets.
Thanks, yeah.
That's how perfect it was. It wasn't until long after they broke up that you learned about all the internecine warfare and the weird personal picadillos and the politics and the fact that they really were human beings.
Yeah.
The entire time they were around, it was just the four brothers with the torn jeans and the leather jackets, singing about pinheads and cretins and lobotomies and.
Let's creep up.
It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. I mean, how many cliches do you want? I learned how to play bass by playing along with Ramones records. I learned, how to play guitar along with Ramones records because, it was so simple and so perfect that you really couldn't go wrong. You just couldn't go wrong. And so I saw the Ramones a bunch of times. For me, it was never like the life-changing epiphany that it was for a lot of people. I just loved the Ramones and just loved seeing them. The thing that impressed me was that as the years went on, even when he got into the 90s, and it was very clear that you could tell they just didn't care anymore.
Yeah.
And they were just punching the clock, playing the set, punching the clock, and going home. There was still nothing like that barrage of sound that they created. It was really overwhelming, just that barrage. There was nothing like it, just literally nothing like it ever. So very glad to have experienced that, very happy to have experienced that. I think I saw the Ramones 7 or 8 times. I mean, they were one of those bands, they were kind of like Black Flag. They played everywhere, even South Florida.
Right.
and they played all the time. So
Yeah, I think I got 3 or 4 Ramon shows in. I could have seen a lot more because in the New York area, obviously they were hitting.
well, yeah, being up here in the Connecticut,
Yeah.
New York, in the tri-state area, I mean, I think I saw them in Brewster, New York, for God's sake. They
Oh,
played
Polos,
Brewster.
at old Polos on yeah, it's close.
Nobody, I mean, the Ramones are the only band that ever played Brewster.
I think House of Pain played there at that.
Oh,
club.
God.
There's a couple bands that played there before. I think the fire department closed them down.
Wow, that's even crazier.
Yeah, I'd like to dig into that history, find out more about that place, because I forgot the Ramones played there at Polos.
Yeah,
Look into
and
that.
you figure sleazy nightclub burned to the ground under mysterious circumstances. You probably know the story.
Yeah.
Not much guesswork involved in that. But
So Kirk,
yeah,
oh, go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say that's it. The Ramones. Really, not much more one can say about it.
Gabba gabba hey. Kirk, what do you think about the Ramones?
Man. Yeah, exactly. There's not much more you can say. I mean, yeah. I don't have the experience seeing a lot of these guys live that I regret, but didn't get around to seeing live music till later on in my life. I just.
When did you start listening to the Ramones? Were they middle school, high school? I mean, they must have.
I mean, yeah, high school before, a little bit before high school, and then high school, and they were always around. I mean, you just, like you said, there's just, and I thought that was really fascinating what you said about the concept and that there's just such a seamless, they just were so iconic in their appearance and presentation and how tight everything came off. You never would have even thought there was just so effortlessly. Everything just seems so effortless, and it's exactly what you were saying. I never would have imagined that there was a concept there, but what they were doing with the music that they obviously grew up loving, and then turning it and shifting it and bringing it into a whole nother place and putting their spin on it. But I loved, but the Holstrom thing, you mentioned that in Punk Magazine, and I love his art, and you talked to, when we were talking about Black Flag, I think about Raymond Pettibon. I love his stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sure,
and I'm a big fan of, and Carrie, who did the Circle Jerks. I was a huge Circle Jerks fan. And I love Carrie, her flyers. They were so, I used to copy those over and over and try to copy that crude Pettibon style. And, but yeah, but all that was so, but yeah, me and my son listened to the Ramones, and he loves Surfing Bird, man. He can do
That's a good song.
Yeah.
My son loves Surfing Bird, and there's actually a children's band called the Boogers who are out of Connecticut, I think, and these guys do the same kind of, they use a Ramones like structure, and they just blast out. They do Peanut Butter and Jelly, the ABC song, and they just and the kids love this stuff. I mean,
it's the energy of it. They feel the energy, and it's great.
Yeah, it translates to everybody. But yeah,
it does.
Cool.
It does.
I'm just going to take a moment to plug myself ever so slightly. Since we're talking about Black Flag and Pettibone,
yeah.
If you go onto my Facebook page, last week I did an entire live stream about various albums, and Slip It In was one of them. And so if you want to hear like my really in-depth take on Black Flag Slip It In, go to Malcolm Tent's Facebook page.
Nice.
I don't know if I said MySpace before. It's too early in the day to think. But my Facebook page.
I'll post a link, Malcolm. I watched it, and it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. So I think everybody should watch it. I'll post a link after the show.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'll check it out. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So I forgot my quote in the beginning, and since it is really relevant to Frank Zappa, my love of Zappa and punk rock, I'm going to break it out now because I don't want to forget to do it. So I bought a book yesterday from a gentleman named Ralph Hewlett. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right, Ralph. I did a box opening for the pictures he had bestowed upon me, and he also sent me a copy of his book, which it's about his time with Led Zeppelin when he was photographing them. But there was one, the show that I bought the Zappa pictures from, September 9th, 1977. Ralph was backstage with Frank, and he got an hour to take pictures and talk about music. And so I want to read one of the quotes because it's very auspicious that this book happened to land in my hands as I'm getting ready to do a punk rock Frank Zappa show. So here we go. This is from Ralph Hewlett, talking to Frank Zappa backstage after the show, I believe. I'll have to confirm that with Ralph. For Zappa, there was nothing new about another current form of music, punk rock. Quote, I like 60s punk rock, like Sky Saxon and the Seeds, Zappa said. But I saw the Sex Pistols on TV, and then I didn't think they were too suave. End quote. So that was Frank's take on punk rock, at least at that point in time. That was said on September 9th, 1977, from Frank to Ralph. So Sky Saxon and the Seeds, I'd never heard of them before today. I've looked them up. I can't wait to dig in deeper. Malcolm, educate me, educate everybody. Mr. Frank Zappa said that what punk rock makes him think of is Sky Saxon and the Seeds.
Well, it's really not that far removed from the truth. I mean, you can draw a direct line from the 60s garage punk bands all the way through to what we now know as punk rock. And that's a deep well to fall into.
Well, I guess he's known for being the garage punk rock godfather. That's who Sky Saxon, the Seeds. That's kind of when you look them up in search. I only did a little cursory research because I only read this.
He's one of several.
Yeah,
one of
okay.
several. I mean, you know, like obviously Sky Saxon, Iggy and the Stooges, the MC5, and then like a million others. Like if you grab the Nuggets compilation album that Lenny Kaye put together, it's all there.
So the documentary I watched, Iggy is in it, and Iggy Pop said if I was ever going to put music on while I was having sex, it would be Sky Saxon and the Seeds.
Well, we all have problems. I'm not sure.
Well, I don't know. That's his quote. I just watched that in the documentary. It's kind of funny that you bring up the Stooges because that's, you know.
Yeah. Well, if the Nuggets compilation, I'm pretty sure the Seeds are on that one. So
checking it out.
Strangely, weirdly, I've been listening to that compilation lately, Malcolm. That's funny you mentioned it. Fantastic.
There you go.
Nice.
You know, and all the interconnections are there because it was compiled by Lenny Kaye, who later was in Patti Smith Group.
Wow, man.
And you know, he was a critic and a writer. It's there. You know, it's like the old saying goes: "There is nothing new under the sun. Everything relates one way or another."
Oh, it's all connected. It's all connected.
Just look hard enough, and you'll find it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be digging into Sky Saxon and the Seeds for sure. Okay, so a couple more things I want to make sure we covered. Well, actually, first, the third thing. Malcolm, did you see Bob Dylan at the Charles Ives Center in May 11th in 91?
Yeah, that was his 50th birthday.
No, was it really?
Yeah.
I didn't remember that. So you were there. That was funny. Do you remember Eric Newser, my buddy, the drummer?
Of course.
So me and him went, and if you remember anything about Eric, he did not like Bob Dylan or anything. Like, he was open-minded musically, but he was mainly into harder stuff. So I was thinking back of how him and I went over that afternoon and saw Bob, and it was great, fun show. I enjoyed it. I don't know how I got Eric to go with me. But do you remember a woman going on stage and trying to hug him, and then he left?
Yeah, she kind of swam the moat to get to the stage, and it was during like a Rolling Stone, and got up to, and bouncers were hustling her off, saying, "Leave that girl alone." They got rid of her, and they finished the song, and he was out.
Yep, I remember him hightailing it out after like a Rolling Stone.
No encore, no nothing. He was gone.
Fuck this, I'm out of here.
Yep, 49 minutes he was on stage. Yeah,
it was fun. I had a good time with that show. Okay, so Devo. Malcolm, do you talk about Devo, or do we come back at a different show and talk about Devo? I mean,
we could do an entire show about Devo. I don't know if anybody.
I'd like to do that. Yeah, I'd like to do that. So I mean, obviously, you're one of the biggest Devo fans I've ever met. Malcolm,
I am the biggest Devo fan you ever met.
Talk about your most recent event, at least. Let's at least get that touch point of you being able to perform at that Devo convention.
Well, in a brief nutshell, very much against my will, I was pressed into service as being the guitar player for the Devo cover band that plays every year the Devo fan gathering. Mm-hmm. The Devo fan gathering is called the Devotional, and we have it at this place called the Beachland Ballroom in Cleveland. Hey. Every year.
Great place.
Yeah. Love it. Great room. And I love Cleveland in general. It's just a cool town. Maybe not as cool as Columbus, okay, but Cleveland's all right. Yeah. So we do the Devo fan gathering annually, last weekend of July. And Lord willing, the creeks don't rise. It's still on for this year.
Oh, man. Hey.
Quite often, our special guest of honor is Jerry Casale of Devo. He's the guy who started Devo. Mm-hmm. He's the boss of Devo. He's the bass player, one of the lead singers, one of the chief songwriters, the conceptualist, the strategist. I mean, Devo is Jerry's band. Like Mark Mothersbaugh is the public face of the group.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody recognizes Mark, the lead singer, with the Coke
Sure.
bottle glasses, and
Yeah.
you know. But Jerry's the boss,
Hmm.
and Jerry is very fan friendly, so he comes out to the devotional. And this was a couple of years ago, and I was basically had my arm twisted to be the guitar player for the Devo cover band. I didn't want to do it because Devo songs are not easy to play. They're tough, they're hard, they're tricky, and it was short notice. So I didn't have a lot of time. I had to learn, I think, something like 15, 16 Devo songs with not much advance warning, and they're all difficult. But they literally had no one else to do it, so I said, okay, I'll do it. So I started learning, and I start getting notes for the way the set's going to go. And it gets to, this song, that song. Then we're going to do Spin the Wheel, and David Kendrick is going to join us. David Kendrick was Devo's drummer from 1987 till 1996.
Of course.
He was also Sparks' drummer during their golden new wave era from 1980 to 1986. So Sparks are major, Devo is major, and he's going to sit in with us on a song.
Wow.
Whoa, okay, that makes things quite a bit more interesting. So then scroll down the set list and we get to the final encore, which is Beautiful World, and the note says, Jerry joins us with David.
Nice.
It's like, OMFG, all of a sudden, now it's going to be myself, Scott Orsi, who's the keyboardist for the Devo tribute band, and Devo's rhythm section.
That's amazing. Holy shit.
That's what I said.
Wow.
So if you go onto YouTube, you can look it up. It's there. If you want me to send you the link, I'll be happy to do so personally.
Please, yeah, send it to me. I want to post it. I'll post it for my listeners and viewers.
Yeah, but it's...
And that was at the Beachland.
What's that?
And that was at the Beachland, you said.
At the Beachland, yeah, in the ballroom, the main room.
Yeah, nice.
And, packed house, all Devo fans, and I've led anything but a boring life. My life has been pretty stimulating, but I'll say that if you want to take the best 8.5 minutes of my entire life, that was it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
me
pretty,
on
pretty
stage
powerful.
with Devo's rhythm section.
That was amazing.
And I didn't fuck it up too badly. That's like...
Well, I'll share that with everybody so you can all check it out, and I'm going to check it out as well. I haven't seen it yet. So you shared one of your most personal moments. So I'm going to tease this. We don't have enough time to talk about it. We're going to have I'm building a separate show about this one night. But one of the most important nights of my life was September 26, 1991. So we set the stage. I was working at Mad Platters at the time. Nirvana were my favorite band. I could not play Bleach enough. Sliver, Ben of Sun, all that stuff was just, I just loved it. I was so into them. I had switched from Mudhoney, who were my favorite band for a while, Fluid, Mudhoney, Soundgarden, and then all of a sudden I just got onto Bleach and started buying all the other singles, and I was like, oh my God, these are my favorite band. So Nevermind's about to come out. They announced they're on Geffen. I'm working at the record store, so I get promotional material. Actually, I'll show a couple pictures if you're watching the webcast. I have the actual original glossies that were sent to me at Mad Platters. I don't have the mobile. There was an actual mobile that hung from the ceiling. I sold that for like $150 10 years ago. So the single comes out. Nevermind's coming out September 24th, 1991. Great. Hurt Teen Spirit, demos. It was a good song. They announced they're going to tour, and they're coming to New Haven. So I asked my mom, can I go? It's a Thursday night. She knows I love them. She probably knew the words to About a Girl because I played it so much. So she says yes. Holy cow, my mom's let me go to a club show during the week. So Keith Romeo, do you remember Keith Romeo? Malcolm?
How could I forget Keith Romeo?
Keith Romeo picks me up. It was just me and him. We go. I had the worst piece of pizza of my life. And long story short, we pay $7. We go see Nirvana 48 hours after Nevermind came out, after Teen Spirit came out. I'm up front, probably 2 or 3 feet from Chris, 5 feet from Kurt. And it was unbelievable. The room, you could just feel there was something going on. And luckily, there was a man there that night that filmed it. Malcolm, who filmed that night? Kirk, do you know?
Oh man, well if I just stretch my memory enough, if I rack my brain hard enough, if I concentrate enough, I can remember the guy's name.
Begins with an M and the last name's a T.
Well, all right, I admit it. It was
We
me.
found you. So Malcolm filmed this. Stood on a.
I
Were you
did it.
standing on a chair? What were you standing on when you filmed it?
Standing on a chair in the back of the room, yes. Roadies giving me the evil eye, yes.
Yeah.
Did it amongst great difficulty.
Thank God you did, man. That's
You're welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, I can't believe that there's video of that night, so important to rock history. I'm a part of it.
Yeah.
And you can see me there. So I'm not going to talk too much more about it. It's on YouTube. I've linked to it. I'm going to have a whole show about it. Malcolm, I posted and started talking to other people that were there that night because I want to try to find anybody who was there and kind of get their story of I refer to it as my Beatles and Hamburg moment. It was just we were at a point in time where the vortex was just really strong. And if you watch the video on YouTube, you just feel it. And it's
cool.
You know, if you watch, they kept saying 2 weeks. Grohl kept saying 2 weeks during the show. I was wondering if they knew that this wave was coming. I wonder if there was something because they were not rock stars that night, man. I talked to Dave Grohl after the show. I talked to Chris. I remember talking to you, Malcolm, after the show, but we'll talk about that in the next episode. So, all right. Any closing words, Kirk, Malcolm? This has just been so much fun talking to you guys.
Just to remind folks what club that was at that night in New Haven.
Oh, it was the Moon in New Haven, Connecticut, which I don't believe is there anymore, right, Malcolm?
It's an office building now.
Okay. Well, it wasn't much of a real nice place anyhow. So.
Yeah. All right.
Sorry. So, any closing thoughts, Malcolm?
Just thanks for listening.
Pardon me. I'm sorry. We didn't talk about the main one thing we have to. Frank Zappa. Malcolm, give me a couple of your thoughts on Mr. Zappa.
Well, I love Zappa. I mean, in the eternal struggle between Zappa and Beefheart, when you get right down to it, I'm more of a Beefheart man.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
I love Frank. Only got to see him live once. It was quite an experience, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Where was it, please, if you don't mind?
This is at a place called the Sunrise Music Theater in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
What year?
November of '84. It was either right before or right after You Are What You Is came out. Tinseltown Rebellion, You Are What You Is era. The whole story is I only decided to go to that show last minute for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. So I got my BFF Jill at her place, and we went down to the venue and went to the box office and said, "Got any tickets left?" They said, "Yeah, we just had a couple open up." So we paid our money, got our tickets, showed them to the usher. The usher led us down past the upper section, down to the floor, down past the middle section, down into the front section, front row center.
Oh my God.
On the aisle.
Oh man.
In front of Frank. Chad Wackerman was to my right.
Oh man.
Ike Willis was right there.
My main man, Ike.
Yep. I forget who's over there, but the security guard with a cigarette in his ear was right behind Frank with his karate uniform. It had a patch that said karate, just so you knew what it was. The coffee dispenser, he was getting coffee for Frank all night. And we watched that show front row center, man. We saw Frank do a break dance. It was also my first attempt to record a show with a Walkman recorder. I was so panicky that every time that the bouncer, who was standing directly in front of me, facing me, every time he would walk up the aisle, I would quickly look down at my pants and make sure the thing was still recording and is it rolling, and then I'd shove it back and the guy would come walking back and stand in front of me again.
Right.
I did that for the entire 2-hour show, and at the end of the night, we were getting up to go, and the bouncer said, "Okay, give me the tape, kid." I was
you thought you had him fooled, right? No.
I thought I bamboozled the guy.
Yeah.
But luckily, plenty of tapes were rolling that night.
Mm-hmm.
And I know at least one song ended up on a "You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore" set.
Which one? Do you know which one?
I don't know. Just
I'll
it's just
find
one
out. I'll find
song, one song from that night.
Okay, cool.
And I actually did get the last half hour of the show. I only gave him the tape of the first hour and a half. Took the tape home, and it was the most overloaded, distorted, blown out, unlistened, because we were so close to the stage, and it was just completely fried the recorder.
Well, you tried. You gave it a shot.
I tried, and I did eventually get a tape of the show later that sounded great, so that's cool.
Cool.
But that was it. I mean, back when I started collecting records, my Holy Triumvirate were the first 3 Mothers albums, because you just couldn't get them.
Yeah.
They'd been out of print for years, and I kept reading about them and how seminal they were and how great they were, and I scoured every record swap meet in South Florida. It took me a long time, and I finally was able to. I got Freak Out first, and then Absolutely Free, and then We're Only in It for the Money, and that's what sold it for me. Besides hearing Dancin' Fool on the radio a lot, it was kind of a hit in South Florida. Seeing Frank on Saturday Night Live was really cool.
With Belushi too. Oh.
Yep. And I was able to find stuff like Joe's Garage. My first Zappa record was Roxy and Elsewhere.
That's one of my favorites. That's one of the top.
Same deal. I bought it just because the cover looked interesting. It had a song called Penguin in Bondage, and Dummy Up, and Don't You Ever Wash That Thing. And I was like, what is this? Look at this cover.
One of the best albums ever made.
It took me a long time to get my head around that, but I kept going back to it. And then once I finally heard Freak Out and the original Mothers albums, that sealed the deal.
Yeah.
So Frank's a good guy. Love him. Mazel tov.
Awesome. Thanks for the story, man. Thanks for bringing that awesome Frank story to us, and your great Black Flag stories. I was not expecting that awesome of an update in history.
And believe me, it could have gone into even more detail, but
we will. We're gonna make some more time.
Being what it is.
Yeah, we're gonna have Malcolm back sometime in the very near future. So guys, this has been so much fun. Thanks for the conversation. Thanks for spending the time with me and my listeners, and hope everybody has a great rest of the Sunday. And with that, peace, love, and Frank Zappa. Bye, everyone.
All right.